In this tutorial, we'll be building an online code compiler. So this is the finished version and I'll just walk you through what we are going to build today. Here is a text box and I have written some C++ code here. And if you click submit, you'll get the output here written hello world. Now firstly, let's discuss how are we going to structure this app. So there will be a browser that will be a React application, React app, a backend that will be a Node.js backend, and the system shell. So once when I have to run this code, I'll hit a post request on /run along with the language and the code. So using this code in Node.js, I'll use the exec command to run this code and then I'll get the standard output. Now using the standard output, I'll send it back to the React app. So that's all we have to do for the first part of this app. Now let's get started with the coding part. Now I've opened the editor, as you can see, it's VS Code, and I've created a folder called online compiler. Now as we move ahead with the project, we'll try to grow organically, and that is that as we need the packages, we'll install them. Now some experienced developers of you might feel the urge to install all the common packages at first itself. You can feel free to go ahead and do it as you like. This is a simple REST API that we are going to create right now. Now I'll go ahead and create a backend folder here. So this folder will contain all the code for our REST API or the backend server. Now once it is created, I'll open it in the integrated terminal and write npm init to initialize the Node.js package. Now I'll just hit enter for everything and have everything as default for now. Now you can see that we have a package.json created for us. This will contain all the things that are related to the metadata of our project. Now we can close this up and create a new file called index.js. This will be the entry point file of our project. So just typing simple boilerplate code in here, console.log hello world, and it's done. So now I'll go ahead and run this with node index.js and hello world. Like, writing this can be complicated and we can avoid this by using a script. So we'll go ahead and create a script in package.json saying node index.js. So whenever I run npm run start, it will type this command node index.js and run our file. So now that we have it installed, now let's get started with creating the REST API. To create the REST API in our Node.js project, we'll use a package called Express. So I'll install the package npm install -- save express. That will install the package in our folder, and as you can see that it is automatically added in the dependencies. So if I go ahead and write const express is equal to require express, const app is equal to express, and app.listen 5000, and we send in a callback function which will be fired when this app gets started. So listening on port 5000. So I'll do npm start, and there we go, listening on port 5000. So let's see if it works or not. I'll go ahead to the browser and I'll write localhost 5000, and we cannot get slash. So I'll write app.get slash, and we create a new arrow function here. Now this arrow function after the slash, as some of you, those who are experienced with Express, might know, that we get a request and a response. It is just simple code that now this inside the blocks, this will get executed when I hit the slash route. So I'll now send I'll not do anything with the request. I'll just simply send a response back. So I'll do res.json hello world, and I'll write a return here. So now if I restart the server again and here we go. We have hello world. So now that our app server is basically complete, we can now move ahead and try to code the actual thing that we want to code. That is the online code compiler or a route/run that will help us run the file. So if I go ahead and write app.post, we'll have this as post because we need to get some parameters as well along with the request. So we'll have post same request response, and now I'll return rest.json rec.body. So body will contain the language and the code that we'll send from the browser, send back whatever we get as a request. So I'll now do this again. Now you cannot actually send a post request from the browser. So to send a post request, I will be using Postman. So you can get Postman easily for free from their website. So I'll switch this method to post and http://localhost 5000 run. So I don't have actually anything in the body, and I'll just send it and I get an empty response. Now this XWW form URL encoded is something that will be sent from the browser to us. Like this mimics that behavior. So since we do not have anything right now, as in a client, we do not have a React client right now, we can simulate the same request from Postman. So if I write in language and CPP and hit a send request, now what do we expect? We expect that we'll get language and CPP as a response, but we don't, right? We don't get anything language CPP. So let's see where we are going wrong right now. If we just console.log here request.body, this means that it will also console log it somewhere around here inside the terminal, and I send this request again. Nope, I get an undefined. Now why are we getting an undefined? We sent some data here, right? Now this is actually happening because we are not parsing that data. That data is in some format that is not exactly available in request.body. It is there with the request, but we need to parse it into the body for us to use it, right? So we'll use a functionality called express.bodyParser or express.parser. So we'll use app.use express.URL encoded. So this is URL encoded, www form URL encoded, and we'll send extended true. Also, just to be safe, I'll also use app.use express.json. I think this should work now. So I'll just start the server again and send the body back. Here we have the response now. So that will take whatever we have in the URL encoded form data and give it, like, make it available inside request.body, right? So now we have request.body here. Now that we have it, I can also have the actual code content here, hashtag include stdio blah blah blah. So I just send it and I get a code here. If we just like go ahead and extract these things out, so I'll write const language equal to rec.body.language, const code is equal to rec.body.code. So this will extract these things out. Now what ES6 provides is it will give us a very short syntax that, okay, rec.body is an object. You can just simply write const rec.body and extract these out from this. So this is equivalent to this. Now every time we'll use this syntax as it is more human readable. Now let's suppose we don't get language with this. So what do we want to do right now? We just need to support CPP right now, right? C++ right now. So even if we don't get the language, we can assume that, okay, he wanted to send us CPP. So I can go ahead and write CPP. Now this is a ES6 syntax that tells us that, okay, if you don't get anything as language inside request.body, use CPP as your default value. So now let's go ahead and test this. Right now we will get this. If I write Python or Py, we will get Py, but if we go ahead and deselect it, like we don't send it with this request. Okay, yeah, see, this happened because we are still sending rec.body. So I'll go ahead and write language and code. So I'll send this as a response now. Npm start and send. Yeah, right, you are getting CPP because it is coming as a default value. But what will happen as a problem is when you send an empty code, now that should not be allowed because you cannot run an empty code, right? So if I just go ahead, if code is equal to undefined, I need to return a response saying, and the status should be 400. So what 400 says is bad request. So res.status 400 and JSON response saying success is equal to false, the job didn't succeed, and the error is that empty code body, right? Empty code body. So I think this should work. Now let's go ahead and see. Okay, this is here, false, empty code body. So I get a status 400 bad request, as you can see here, and I get the error, right? So this is done. I'm getting the language and I'm also getting the code now. We need to generate a C++ file with content from the request. We need to run the file and send a response back. So we just need to create two different functions, that which will generate a C++ file, and then we need to run the file and send a response. Right, so now let's go ahead and create these functions. So I will write, it's better to you not like put everything into an index.js file, and you can go ahead and create a new file for yourself through which we import the functions later on. Like generate file.cpp. Oops, go ahead, generate file.js. So now what this file will do is, it will like we'll create a function over here. So const generate file, and we'll create an arrow function here, and then we'll export it. So module.export is equal to generate file. And since this is done, now what content will I need? I'll need the format and the code content, right? So, and let's make this an async function because we need to, we need to go step by step synchronously. So we'll go ahead and create a folder. We'll need a folder here. Okay, so we have this function here and we are exporting it. So firstly we need to look, where do we need to store these codes? We can store them somewhere here inside codes. So how will this relate to this? From index.js, this is directly in the folder of codes, or generate.file and codes. So we'll have the path module. You'll see in a moment what we'll do with it. So I'll just require it, and now I'll create a path file for the code directories. So that will be path.join dir name. So what dir name does is, it will give the path of the folder in which generate_file.js exists. So wherever this file exists, dir name will give us that, and we'll do codes. So this is particularly useful path.join because you have different ways of writing path or folder names or joining folder names in different operating systems. So this kind of gives us a cross-platform functionality. You can use / in Linux and / in Windows. So all of this is handled by path.join, and you have this codes, but you are not guaranteed that this codes folder will exist every time, right? That you may or may not have this, and if you do not have it, it will cause a problem while writing the file. So now let's go ahead and I'll show you how do you use fs module to do this. So const require fs, and you do if a very simple condition, if not fs.exist sync. So what is, if it doesn't exist, if dir codes doesn't exist, fs.make dir sync, so make directory in a synchronous fashion, dir codes, and recursive is true. So now this is done. We are now sure that once we are at the end of this line, we'll have a folder named codes, right? So now we have to create a file. So now what will be the name of this file? If you think about it, we can create code 1, code 2, code 3, but that is kind of cumbersome, right? It is difficult to do. So what we'll do is we'll use a unique ID generator, and through that unique ID generator, I'll create a new unique ID for each file, join.cpp after it, and then save the content in this file. Now that might seem a lot. Let's jump into the code and see how we'll actually do it. So we do npm install --save uuid. UUID is a really good package that helps us generate very unique IDs. So I'll now import it. So we'll have this const this require uuid. So UUID has a lot of versions inside of it, and as you can see, there is v1, v3, v4. Now using v4 as a variable name inside of our code won't make it actually very easy for us to understand what v4 is. So what we can do is we can extract v4 out of whatever UUID provides us and rename it as uuid. So the function v4 is now renamed as uuid for further use inside our code. So const v4 uuid, okay, now that is good. We'll create a new variable saying job id is equal to uuid, and it's done. We get a new job id, we get a string. So like you can see, uuid takes in options and returns a string, so we are sure to get a string here. Now we create the file name. So what file name does it? It will combine the job ID and the format together along with a dot in between. So const file name is equal to, we'll use template strings here. JavaScript template strings are really good to manipulate strings and create new formats. So we'll do this. We'll do const file name is equal to template string. We'll use job ID here and we'll use format here. Now we'll create a file path. So now I'll use this dir codes like /home/zerifin/codes and combine them with this file name. Now to combine, what did we use before? We used path.join. So we'll use that again for cross-platform availability, and everything should work fine everywhere. So const file path is equal to path.join, sorry, not JSON, path.join dir codes and file name. So this will give us /home/etc/etc/ the unique id.cpp. Now in this file we'll generate this file and write the content inside of it. So what we'll do is we'll await. So fs.write file sync, we'll use this function, and in this file path we are going to write this content and return the file path. Now let's summarize what we have created here. So we have const job id is equal to uuid. We create a unique path we join the format along with it, we create a file path for this file, and then we write the content in that file. Now I'll just use the auto formatter to clean up everything. Now is the time to actually test whether we are able to write this content or not. So how we will test is we'll write this content inside this file, and then we'll send a file path back to the user inside the postman. So now I'll have to make it async because I'll have to like generate file waits for this, so we wait for generate file. Now this is an async function, so we can simply use const file path is equal to, oh wait, we have to import this first, so we'll go ahead and const. Now I use this technique to do it because I don't actually write first what I need to import. I first write from where do I need to import it. Now I'll show you in just a second why that is beneficial. So I have written const curly braces equal to require generate file. Now here I get autocomplete, which I wouldn't have got first because the code editor didn't know where to import it from. So I get const generate file, and then I'll use this function here. So I generate file, I send in the language, and then I send the code, right? And then I send this file path back to the user. So const file path. Now let's go ahead and run this thing. So npm start, and as you can see, we already have a codes folder here which wasn't here before. So this means that when I require it, this file runs automatically and it exports it from here. Like it does this const dir codes is defined, it creates this function, the generate file function is defined, and then we export it. So when we are requiring anything, we are sure that all the setup that we need to do, it will be executed. So enough with that. Now I'll straight away go ahead and use postman to send a code file. So I'll do cpp hashtag include stdio.h int main print f hello world, printf hello world, and we return 0, and we do this. So I will go ahead and include ice cream here, and we're done. We'll send this file. I get an empty file path. Now let's see what happened here. We have an error. It says that content is not defined. Content is not defined. Why is content not defined? Oh, code, right?
Oh, that's why.
So I'll do content npm start. I send the request again get it 200. Okay, I didn't use await, right? So I didn't use await. Const file path is equal to await generate file. I'll restart the server and I do this, and now I get this path. So now we complete the generating file part. We can simply go ahead and run this file. I don't really think we can do that right now because we have a very silly error. So now I think it should be correct. Yep, that is correct now. So I have this file. Now I can go ahead and even run this file. I'll try to show you. So cd codes, I'll do g++7.cpp, and then I get a .a.out, and then I do hello world. So I send the content from here. It goes all the way to this API route function. Then we generate the file, and then we can even run it from here itself. So now I'll go ahead and delete the files for now. That is done. Now I need to figure out a way how to run this file, right? How am I running it right now? I'll start ahead with that. So firstly, wait, I shouldn't have deleted that. Node index.js, cd backend, node index.js, and here I'll send a file again. We get this file, so that is working flawlessly now. And how do we actually run it? We go inside the folder, we do g++, the file name, and if I just combine it into two commands into the one command now, and .a.out, I get hello world, right? So this is the trick that we have to do programmatically. Like, we don't do it manually, the program does it for us. So I'll now go ahead and create the file through which we'll be able to execute this command inside the shell and then send a response back. Okay, so I have this generate file, and now what I need to do is I need to create another function through which we'll be able to run this file. Now, what do we need to do right now? We need to have a functionality through which we will be able to execute shell commands from inside of Node.js. So we'll use Node.js child process module. Now this child process, what it does is it gives me two functions. One is a spawn and one is an exec. You can go ahead and look what the differences are here, but for this video we'll be using exec command. So I'll go ahead and create a new file, run or execute cpp.js. Yeah, so using that same trick, const exec equal to require child process. So, and then I'll create a new function, const execute cpp. Now it will be a very simple function. It will take in the file path that we just generated. It will execute it and give us the response back. So now I'll create a simple function which takes in the file path and a normal arrow function, and then we execute it as well. So like we export it, and then we have const execute cpp file path. So I'll return a new promise. Promise in very layman terms, it can also mean that, okay, just be sure that you will either get a response or you will get an error after some time, so please wait for me. So I have this standard generic resolve reject structure here. It is better to create a separate folder in which we'll store the outputs. So going by the same functionality, I'll just write it out very quickly again, that output path is equal to path.join, and that will be /dir name and output. So it will create a folder over here, and if not fs dot I don't know why this suddenly stops working in between. So const fs equal to require fs dot exist sync output path. If it doesn't exist, then I go ahead and make the sync output path and recursive is true. So we'll be sure that we'll have an outputs folder here when we execute this file. And now we go ahead and actually create, like, we get a file path, so we have to now extract the job ID so we can create a good output file name. So since it is .a.out, we'll use the job ID instead of the job ID .out. So const job ID. Now what did we have here? Copy path. I'll just show const this /home/refine/online compiler. All we need is this part. What we can do is we can straight away use base name to do that, right? We just need the base name. So base name is essentially this file, the file that we are talking about, and we can use the inbuilt functionality that is provided as per path. So I'll include the path module here, and const job ID is equal to path.basename file path. file path, then what it will give us is, I'll just show you, /code/ this file name, and we'll get this as well as this, but what we need is just this. So how about splitting the string into two portions on this decimal or full stop, dot split : this will give us an array of this part, so it will be now like this. Now we need the first index, so we get the first index. So now that I have got the job ID, I'll now create the output path. So const output path is equal to path.join output path. Now what do we have to do? We have to join the outputs folder and the out name. So we'll do const job id dot out. So exec, wait, we can do this even outside of the promise. We don't need to have this inside of it. So what we do, we return exec. Now what exec does is it takes in a command. So what will be a command to execute the C++ file? It will be g++ file path, that is where does the file exist, what file do we have to compile, where do we have to output it. We can specify using the O flag. So we do this and then we put the out path. So where do I need to have the output stored? Now what will happen is we are still in the backend folder right now, so we need to go inside of it, inside the outputs folder. So we do cd output path and then execute it as you normally do. So we do ./job id dot out, right? We simply do this dot out. So yep, and then once I write this entire complete command, I'll send in a callback function. I'll do this on the next time so it is much more legible. I have sent this command before, and now I'll send the error std out std error. So these are the three things. Error, as you can see, it will tell us what error did actually occur. Std out will be the normal standard output that will be sent to us if nothing wrong happens, and std error will be the error output that will be sent to us. So if there is an error, I actually reject this promise. Reject is not actually reject, but it tells the code calling this function that there is some error. So I'll send the error and std error along with it. Or if there is std error or error, I'll reject std error. Cool. And now reject simply exits out of this function. We don't go below reject. So reject is something like a return on steroids kind of thing. So, or now since everything is fine, I can just resolve and I can just send the output back. Okay, and I think this function is complete. So I execute cpp is called along with the file path that we generate from the function that we created before. Then we create const job id. So we extract the job id, we get output path. Then we return a new promise where we execute this statement and resolve std out if everything goes fine. So now let's test it. Now let's test if this actually works. So I move this file into the backend. I don't know why it comes outside every time. And const output is equal to await. I'll have to import it as well. Equal to require /execute cpp, and then we get the execute cpp function and await execute cpp and file path. So we get the file path and the response as well. Now I think we are ready to test it. So we'll just come back and write npm start. So npm start, this is working, and now this is the code that we had. So I think we should expect a hello world in response. So I'll just send it, and it takes some time. You do notice that it took 765 milliseconds. Now ES6 allows us to write this in a very short form. So if there is an error, like if it is not false, then error and reject error stdr, right? If stdr, if this is true, then we'll execute the next function as well, reject stdr, else resolve stdout, and we can delete everything below this. So it gives me a very small function. So even if I have something like for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 100, I plus plus, and I just enclose it inside this braces, and I do this, it will take some time, as you might expect. Did something go wrong? Yes, something went wrong. Unhandled promise rejection warning object. Okay, yeah, I didn't try catch this. So try yeah, await. If something goes wrong, like if you get an error or something, it throws an error and you catch that error inside the try catch block. Now we'll see what this error is. Res.status 500 JSON and error. So now let's restart the server and I send in. Okay, this is killed because A was not declared in the scope. Oh, is this an error? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so as you can see that you can even get a very comprehensive error regarding this. So I had A was not declared in scope. This is particularly useful because we're able to show this output on the dashboard as well. So if I now do this, yep, we get slash and slash. This looks beautiful. And now for this basic part, for part 1, we are done with our backend. Okay, so now is the time to create a React client. To use this, I'll use the utility create React app. So now let's see how do we do that. So to do this, I'll use npx create React app, and then I'll write the name of the directory or the React project that I want to create. So that will be client, and this does npx create React app client. So we'll wait while this finishes. Okay, so now that this is complete, so I'll just split this terminal into two, and here I'll cd into the client and click yarn start. So this will start up the server. Just a second. Okay, so now that you can see, here is the React logo, and this is the default template that we get with the create React app. Now I'll just go ahead and remove this boilerplate code inside src app.js. So here you can see that you have edit and save to reload. We have to remove everything. So from header to the next header, I'll delete this code. I'll save this and I'll write, okay, I'll remove this necessary import. And you can see that here we have, hey, go into app.css and see that .app has this text align center. So I'll remove this, and here it goes into its correct place. Now is the time to create our own text box and a submit button through which we will send the data. So here I'll remove this. Here I'll add firstly a heading saying online code compiler. Yes, this is h1 compiler. Now I'll add a text area here. So text area, I'll save this. We get this text area over here, and then I'll add a break line and then a button. So the button that will say submit. Now we can see that this looks kind of thin, so I'll add rows here. So rows is 20 and calls is 75, so the width of it. So now this looks more like a proper editor. Now I'll save this, and now what you have to do is, now if we write the content over, it doesn't get saved anywhere, right? So the first thing that we have to do is to save whatever content we have in this text area. So for that, I'll be using a use state hook that is provided to us by React. So import React and use state from React. Now here I'll write const code set code is equal to use state and with an empty string. So I'll initialize this variable code with an empty string. Now just to give you a brief, this will be the variable that will store the code content of this text area, and the set code will be used to change the content of this text area. So this is the default content with which we'll start it with. So I'll use this and set the value as code. And if I add an on change listener here, I'll create an anonymous arrow function where we'll get the event object, and then in this event object we'll use set code e.target.value. So now we have this, that whenever this code changes, we'll receive this e as a parameter, and this .target.value will be the text content of this text area. So I'll then use it to set code. And now is the time to use an on click listener on the button. So on click handle submit. So we'll create this handle submit function over here. Handle submit is equal to anonymous function, so const handle submit, and I'll just console log the code. So here now, if I just open the console here using Control Shift I and send this below and write a code hash include stdio.h, and I submit this, so you can see that this has been console logged here. This means that everything is working, and in this handle submit function, now we'll call the backend. We'll send this code to the backend and get a response back. Now to send this response back, I'll be using Axios library to do this job. So I'll shut down this server for a moment and write npm install --save Axios. Yep, now it is ready to be used here. So I'll just import this, import Axios from Axios. We'll create a payload object that we'll send along with the request. So payload will be language is CPP for now, and the code is the code. So ES6 code :code is same as code. So using this, now I'll send the response. So axios.post http://localhost 5000, and now we send the data. So the data is payload, and we again create this as an async function and wait for the output. So const output is equal to await axios.post. So just clarifying it, handle submit, we make a payload object, and then we send this post request to /run. So http localhost 5000 /run, and then we get the output, and then we console log it. So let's see what we get here. Now I'll have to start the backend server as well. So cd backend and npm start. Here also we do yarn start. Okay, so I open the console and let's see what we have. So 0 and this. Now I hit submit. But now I get an unexpected error. It says that localhost 5000/run from origin 3000 has been blocked by course policy. So now to briefly explain this, I'll just tell you that on the localhost, if you send a request from one port to another port, this will be blocked by default due to the course policy. So that is cross origin resource sharing policy. It blocks it. So now I'll have to enable it from the backend. So always remember, when you get a course error, make sure that you resolve it on the backend side. It is not the fault of the front end here. So I'll go to the backend code and I'll use another module that is called course. So this is the backend terminal here. I'll install npm install --save course. So now that this is installed, this is yet another middleware that we'll introduce in the index.js. So firstly, we'll import it. So const course equal to require course. And then we use app.use course. And course without any parameters is just default values. So now let's start the server again. npm start. Listening on port 5000, so this started. And now if I send this request again, cool, we get a status 200 response, and we also get some data saying file path. Okay, so this is good, and we also get the output hello world. That's nice. So this means that the route is working perfectly and the front end is working perfectly as well. Now we need to display this output on the front end as well. So what we'll do is we'll extract the data out of this. So output.data will now just be data, and I'll create a separate paragraph tag here to display the output. Paragraph and output. So I'll create another use state hook for this. So const output set output use state, and it will be initialized with an empty string. So now once I get this output, I'll set it here, set output as data.output, and this is complete. Now we have one thing remaining to do. We didn't enclose it in a try catch, so I'll do it right now. Try catch at console.log error.response. Now if I go ahead and test this, now we have this code from the previous run, so I'll go ahead and run it. I'll click submit, and here we get the response hello world and hello world 2. If I do this again, I get hello world 2. So this is working perfectly. And now let's see, if I do some error here, do we get a console log? Yes, we got a console log here, and you can see that we can get and display here whatever we place. So we get the error here. So now this means that our app that we set out to code is working perfectly, and we can now wrap the part 1 there. Well, this completes the first part of our online code compiler tutorial. And if you like this video, or you think that this video helped you in some way, please like the video and share it with your friends. And please do subscribe to the channel for more such videos. The next part of this tutorial will come out next week, where we will add multiple languages to this online code compiler. We will use MongoDB, and we'll use Docker to package this app. Thank you.